joining our webinar this afternoon on the MLC Convention and how it should be safeguarding seafarers in a changing world. My name is Ellen. I'm from MaritimeMT, a maritime school in Malta, committed to support the maritime community through education, training, and insightful discussion like these. We provide maritime training designed to prepare seafarers for a career at sea, and today's session is aimed at informing and empowering seafarers to be able to navigate their careers with confidence. Joining me today are Adriana Quesada, Senior Lecturer at MaritimeMT, and Javier Diaz, Director at the 𝗬MIP Knowledge Management Office, both of whom will be offering valuable insights into worker rights and protections. I will now hand over to Adriana to start the conversation. I invite you participants to share any questions in the chat, and hopefully we will have enough time to go through them towards the end of the session. Thank you, Adriana.
Thank you so much, Alan. And everyone, welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking about the Maritime Labour Convention, safeguarding seafarers in a changing world. Now, a little bit about me. As Alan said, my name is Adriana Quesada. I am a seafarer, a researcher, and an educator. I am currently investigating safe manning practices and how legislations affect working lives at sea. And today's session, we will talk about the Maritime Labour Convention 2006, which is a critical framework that has changed the landscape of seafarer rights. Briefly, we're going to explore what came before the Maritime Labour Convention, what changed, and what it means for you who might be on board. And I would like to start this session with a quick poll on the chat. And there is not going to be, just on the chat. Type yes if you are a seafarer and you have ever signed a seafarer employment agreement under the MLC. Alan, check the chat.
Yes, 3 responses. Yes, 4. It's a mix, but there are
Fantastic.
a few yeses. Yes.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for participating. Now, if you are not sure, if you're a seafarer and you are not sure if you have signed an employment agreement according to the MLC, that's also completely okay. By the end of the session, you will know if you did or if you didn't, hopefully. Okay, now, before we actually talk about the MLC or the Maritime Labour Convention, we need to understand where it comes from. The organization where it comes from is the International Labour Organization, or ILO. The ILO was created in 1919, right after the World War I, as part of the Treaty of Versailles. It was founded on a very powerful idea that they wanted lasting peace, and it can only be achieved through social justice. And what makes the ILO unique? Well, it is the only organization that is a three-party structure. It means that governments, employers, and workers all have equal voice in setting the international labor standards. Now, what is the involvement of ILO with maritime, you would say? Now, this started very early on in 1920, where they held their first maritime session at the International Labour Conference. And here they focused on seafarers' rights, safety, working conditions, even before we could imagine about the MLC. Now, in 1946, the ILO became a specialized agency of the United Nations, which continues promoting to protect workers, including those at sea. Now, let's talk about the ILC, the International Labour Conference, maritime sessions. And why do they even exist, the maritime sessions? So As I mentioned before, back in 1919, when the ILO was created, the world was rebuilding from a war, and they were laying down the foundations for social justice through labor rights. But there was one group which was left out of this conversation, the seafarers. From the very beginning, it was decided that shipping industry was too special, too complex, too international, and seafarers were segregated. We were separated into a special session that we'll address in the international labor conferences. And this decision to segregate seafarers had serious consequences, because by treating maritime labor as an exception, we were excluded from the broader labor movements. Think about it. While workers ashore were gradually gaining protections like the 40-hour work week, weekends, strong labor inspections, seafarers, we were left with minimal and fragmented standards, and these standards were often unenforceable. Even now, today, that we have the MLC 2006, which is supposed to be the cornerstone for seafarers, a seafarer is legally allowed to work up to 91 hours a week, 91 hours a week, and depending on how rest hours are interpreted. That's more than double the standard ashore. Imagine, ashore you work up to 40 hours, on board you work up to 91 hours. And so when we ask ourselves why seafarers are still vulnerable today, it starts here with a century-old belief that our sector is somehow too unique for basic labor rights. And that is something we need to keep challenging. Now, let me talk to you about some other conventions that never reached the status of entering into force. They were not ratified enough. Before the MLC, there were other attempts to standardize the seafarer rights. One of the efforts was Convention 147, which was adopted in 1976. Its full name was Merchant Shipping, parentheses, Minimum Standards Convention. And it had a good idea behind it. It said that if a ship wanted to operate internationally, it had to meet basic international labor standards. But there was a catch. It only applied if the flag state had already ratified other ILO maritime conventions. So the bar that was set to enforce this convention was very high. And even if a country ratified it, there was little oversight, and inspections were inconsistent at their best. And in the very end, few countries ratified it, and even fewer were able to enforce it properly. That's why, despite its name, that it tried to achieve this minimum international labor, Convention 147 failed to deliver meaningful protections for seafarers. That's one of the attempts. Then, a few years later, Convention 180, 1996. Here, they tried again to set a standard for seafarers, for work and rest. The purpose of 180 was to regulate the hours of work and rest for seafarers and to make sure ships had enough crew on board to operate safely. It introduced the limit of 14 hours of work per day, 72 hours of work per week, per week, or alternatively, 10 hours of rest a day and 77 hours of rest a week. Ships under this convention were also supposed to carry a manning document and keep accurate records of hours of work and rest. This sounds familiar, right? Many of these provisions were later absorbed into the MLC under Regulation 2.3. But again, there was a serious flaw with this convention. Hardly any countries ratified it. Now, ratification is very important. It's the country saying, I agree to this convention, I will introduce it in my laws and enforce it on ships carrying my flag. So unless a country ratifies it, unless a country accepts this convention into their laws, there's nothing they can do. And without any widespread adoption, so there were not many countries accepting it, it had very little real world impact. So once again, we had a convention that looked good on paper, but didn't protect us seafarers in practice. Even the standards it introduced, like working up to 72 hours a week, were still far behind what's acceptable ashore. Remember, ashore is 40 hours. So while this convention was a step forward, it was very far away from being enough. And it was another sign that seafarers needed stronger, unified convention. Now, I have told you a bit of a story. What was the problem? Why do you think earlier efforts to unify seafarer rights fail? Most of these conventions were either outdated, not widely ratified, or lacked enforcement. As we said, C-180 had noble intentions for regulating the work and rest hours, but only a handful of countries ever ratified it. So imagine being on a ship with no consistent global standards to protect your rest hours, your accommodations, your repatriation, or even your rights to be paid. It was inconsistent at best and dangerous at worst. We needed something comprehensive, enforceable, and global. And that is where MLC 2006 comes in. So everything begins with an idea. In the year 2000, during the 88th Maritime ILC session, the ILC came up. They acknowledged officially that the existing maritime labor framework was no longer fit for purpose. For the first time, they proposed creating a comprehensive and consolidated convention, one that would bring together the dozens of outdated and fragmented instruments that had failed to protect seafarers effectively. And why did this happen? Because after decades of piecemeal conventions, the ILO finally had to face reality. Seafarers were still working under some of the weakest labor protections in the world. Many conventions were outdated, some from the 1920s and 1930s. They were not widely ratified, and they were impossible to enforce consistently across international shipping. Because remember, maritime world, shipping is international. It involves many nations. Now, the ILO, they admitted that their patchwork approach had failed. And during the 88th session, they started drafting the Maritime Labor Convention. This was their super convention that would consolidate, modernize, and finally make enforcement possible through port state control. But even then, this wasn't a gift. This shift didn't happen because seafarers were suddenly valued. It happened because the system was collapsing under its own inefficiency, and governments and ship owners and unions realized they had no choice but to fix it or lose all credibility. So the 88th session wasn't just the beginning of the MLC, it was a long overdue admission that seafarers had been denied basic labor rights for far too long. Now, 2006, the International Labour Organization came and they said, okay, we are here, we have it. And they adopted a single consolidated convention, the Maritime Labour Convention 2006. It brought together and modernized over 68 previous standards into one cohesive document. It was adopted at the 94th International Labour Conference, and it entered into force after it received enough ratification, enough acceptance and signatures from nations in 2013. The MLC today is considered the fourth pillar of international maritime law, standing alongside SOLAS, MARPOL, and STCW. For the first time, we had a framework that was not just about rules, but also rights. Now, MLC 2006, great. I'm saying seafarers, rights, but what does it actually cover? What does the MLC actually give you? So the MLC covers every phase of life on board. It includes minimum required for work, like age, medical fitness. It includes employment conditions, which means that you are given clear contracts, you're given the opportunity to revise them and to sign them, and you get a copy of your contract. Living and working conditions that are decent. So you get a clean accommodation, good food, you have medical care, health protections, and a complaint and enforcement mechanism. You might have seen, if you're a seafarer, you might have seen MLC posters on board or been told during an inspection that your contract must comply with it. Tell me, if you are a seafarer, with a thumbs up on the chat, have you ever seen an MLC complaint procedure posted in your ship's common areas?
We have a few yeses as well.
Fantastic. Because if you haven't, that's already a red flag. That something must be displayed under the MLC. You need to be aware of what you have to do, what steps to take, if there's something that you need to complain about. But if you have, great. Now, who is covered by the MLC? The MLC 2006 applies to all seafarers working on ships of 500 gross tonnage and above of international voyages. And they need to be flying the flag of a ship that has ratified. See, the MLC applies to all seafarers on all ships, except Navy ships, except ships built from, how is it called? Craft ships like canoes. This doesn't apply to the MLC. Otherwise, it applies to all of them. This is what we already discussed. The MLC also gives you a definition of what is a seafarer. A seafarer is all persons working on a ship to which the conventions apply, and the ship is a ship, another one only for only inland waters, so all ships. And it usually applies to all ships engaged in commercial activities. Now, who is a seafarer? Who would you say is a seafarer? A seafarer is any person who is employed or engaged or works in any capacity on board a ship which this convention applies. Now, assuming that the ship is covered by the MLC 2006, are these workers seafarers? The master? Yes, the master is a seafarer. It must be employed on board with a contract. The ship chaplain. The ship chaplain is like the priest. The priest maybe is a seafarer. It's going to depend on the term of their engagement. Are they employed by the ship or are they just visiting? The ship doctor, yes. They work in a capacity on board the ship and they're typically employed or engaged. Is a port pilot a seafarer for the MLC purposes? No. Because, yes, okay, the port pilot, they need to have been a seafarer. They still need to have their licenses. But the port pilot is normally not contracted by the ship itself. It's contracted by the port. And it's giving a service extra to the ship. A hotel waiter in a passenger restaurant. Yes, they work on a capacity on board the passenger ship. They are considered seafarers. A cook, a chef. Yes, the cook is very important. Without the cook, if the cook is bad, not good food. And on board, if you don't have good food, seafarers cannot work. An entertainer, maybe. It's going to depend again on the type of contract that this entertainer has. Armed guards, when you are navigated, I hope you don't have to, but I have navigated near pirate-infested waters, Horn of Africa, and we had to carry on board armed guards because we are not allowed to carry guns as seafarers, but we needed protection. I was on a tanker with very low freeboard, so we needed someone with guns in case pirates attacked. They are not considered seafarers. They're hired independently to come and help us. Fantastic. Now, it also gives you definitions about ship owners. It also gives you definitions about what are the ship owners' obligations and the agencies, the manning agencies, the ones that are going to help you between the ship owner and you. It has to be a fair process. You cannot be paying the manning agency. And yes, what else does the MLC talks about? The MLC, as we said, talks about your rights and what to do, the complaint procedure. So what happens when your rights are not respected? First of all, you start on board the ship. You use the onboard complaint procedure. And as we said, every ship must have one. If it's still unresolved on board, you can go to the master, to the company contact person, or you even can escalate to the flag state authorities. If you're in port, you can contact Port State Control, a union representative, or an ITF inspector. And you always have to document everything that is happening so that you could have a proper case. You don't have to share this with me in the chat, but ask yourself, would I feel safe making a complaint on my current ship? If your answer is no, that tells us how far we still have to go. Okay, now I want to let you know that the MLC is a living document. The MLC is constantly being amended. That means it's constantly being updated. The last amendments to the MLC entered into force last year, 2024. And they cover, among all things, free access to drinking water and nutritious and good food on board, internet access. They're not telling you that they have to provide you free internet or that the internet has to be good, but they do have to provide you with internet access at a fair price. You should be able to get repatriated, that means go back home. You need to have proper size PPE, that's personal protection equipment. This is to reflect different body sizes, the difference between male and female bodies as well. When I was on board, I could never find safety boots my size. I wore 37 and the smallest one they have was 40. This is not safe. There should be clear information on compensation for you if you have losses during the recruitment process. You need to be provided medical care assured, and there should be improved transparency in financial security certificates. These are all parts of the updates that have been part of the amendments 2024. Now, I want to end my part with this. Remember that the MLC 2006 is not perfect, but it is very powerful. It gives us the baseline of protection, dignity, and accountability. But rights don't mean anything if we do not know them. Now, for the final thing, in just one word, type in the chat, what does the MLC mean to you? And thank you so much for joining me. If you have any other questions, post in them in the chat and we will try to answer them at the end of this. And thank you so much and stay safe.
Thank you, Adriana. That was a very interesting discussion. For most of the participants, the MLC represents protection. As a second guest, now I have Javier, who will go into the next part of the discussion. The mic is yours, Javier. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you read me well? Yes. Thank you. I will take this moment to upload my presentation, please. It's full screen, right? Yes, first, good morning, still morning, about noon in Panama.
We cannot hear you, Javier.
Hear him. Javier, however, you don't have full screen on your presentation. It's presenter view.
Okay, just let me a moment. Right here. Okay, I will try to share it again in. Still, presenter view.
Now you're good, Javier.
It's okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And first of all, thanks for MaritimeMT, a maritime school in Malta, for the invitation and the organizers to this very accurate webinar addressing a topic that matters for all of us who has a seafaring background. So it's a crucial topic, and I will take this moment, these few minutes to discuss or to complement what was really perfectly addressed by my colleague Adriana regarding the background of the MLC and what is the way forward in terms of seafarers rights. So it's for me it's an honor. I'm Javier Diaz from Panama, from the International Maritime University of Panama. I'm director of Knowledge Management Office here, and also the project manager of the Maritime Technology Cooperation Center for Latin America, which is the MTCC Latin America, one of the centers established by the International Maritime Organization, regional to tackle some of the issues related to training, capacity building, strategic alliance, technical cooperation for a sustainable and efficient shipping. So it's for me it's an honor. Really glad to be here sharing this moment. I've also seafaring background Perhaps we work a couple of years in the same company with Adriana, so we have some experience in a company, in an international company that provided opportunities for male and females. And it's a challenge on board for everyone, and these are the points that I would like to discuss in my presentation. So that was a integral explanation by Adriana regarding the development of the Maritime Labor Convention, which was which was developed by the International Labor Organization, but it still belongs to the four pillars of the maritime industry. It's the only one developed not by the IMO, but still refers to a very important topic, which is the seafarer rights. So it's a comprehensive framework, this MLC, aimed at ensuring fair working living conditions for seafarers worldwide. As the maritime evolve, of course, my part of the presentation will address the multiple challenges, including advancement in technology, the needs of environmental protection, the growing importance of mental health, the promotion on gender equality, and other key aspects that are being pushed by the regulators to move also the industry towards these factors that contribute to a more sustainable shipping, to a more sustainable practice in maritime industry. So you will see here we're addressing some training, the importance of continuous education, skill development in terms of environmental protection. We have the regulatory compliance, sustainable practice, the technology uptake, which is a critical part because you understand as seafarers we are sometimes facing a uptake of new technology in different system, different equipment. So we have to cope up with the technology as soon as possible if we like to maintain ourselves on board. We have to have undergo the training and to take all the all the certificates as well in order to continue our work on board the vessel. So in the other aspects, we'll address the importance of mental health as well. So let's go directly to the first point, which is the training aspects, and this is a critical role because we have identify that it's not is not something local or regional. It's a global need about the training. Seafarers nowadays, depending your position on board, you have to take several trainings in order to certify your competence on the role, on the position that you develop on board. So starting with the identification of the need, recognizing the necessity for the training, as I mentioned, depending on your role on board, and the methods in response to technological advancement. We will address this topic in a later stage, but it's very important to know, to identify, am I deck officer, I'm an engine officer, I'm a rating, depending what is your role on board. It's crucial to identify what are the training needs in order to be prepared and competent for the position, regardless the nationality on board, regardless the flag of vessel, regarding it's a matter of you are competent for the position that you are developing on board. That is a way to enhance also the safety. Now, the second stage in this illustration is the integrative digital tools, incorporating digital tools and simulations in the training program and enhanced learning. Most of us that have been engaged in training on board, in work on board, I have to say, we have undergone this simulation training. if we are in the engine department, we are deck department, have simulators for everyone, even for electrotechnical officers. That is a new position developed by the STCW from the amendments. It's also availability of simulation training in order to have some close to real scenarios, in order to familiarize the seafarers to have a proper training, because we speaking about sometimes the rights and all the let's say the conditions, the living conditions and the welfare that we like to have on board as seafarers, but also these are some of the evolving challenges that the seafarer have to be well trained and competent for the position. So it's a win-win situation for everyone. So you win a good job with good living conditions, and you provide the best of your professionalism and your competency to enhance the safety in all operations. Of course, the emphasis in the certifications, ensuring the seafarers meet with the MLC 2006 requirement and standards, the STCW, the SOLAS, the MARPOL, and all the enforced regulations and certification, and all, above all, is to achieve the competence, not only the certificates, but also to achieve the competence to ensure that the seafarer is prepared to operate advanced technology safely and efficiently. So it's a good opportunity to address this topic as the first evolving challenges when we discuss this. And I have included this presentation in order to the seafarer familiarize a little bit. This is an ongoing project that we're developing currently related to the maritime education and training. It's a decarbonization initiative, and what it's required for the seafarer to achieve this. And in the introductory part of this study, we have identified the need of cross-skilling, reskilling, upskilling, and de-skilling in order to prepare the seafarer with the competence required for this transition from traditional and business as usual to a more sustainable world. So we are talking about enabling seafarers to acquire the skills in a related field. Also, the reskilling, we meaning to provide the training or to adapt to new technologies. And upskilling is when the seafarer enhance the existing skills that they have, and the skilling some skills that not longer required for the seafarer. So it's a crucial part of this training, and we have been working this very close with the International Association of Maritime University, among other institutions, the Italian Shipping Academy. Perhaps a good scenario also to work things together now that I've the importance, because we're promoting the development of a green curriculum. That means that the seafarer have more knowledge about technology, sustainability, energy efficiency practice, in order to go on board with a broad understanding of what is required currently by the industry. And then they can meet the requirement, the criteria, and as I said, the seafarer is competent, so he can also, from the competence, he can also request the fulfillment of each of the rights, because it's a competent seafarer that he has all the, and not only the certificate, but also the competency to go on board and to deliver a good job on board, but not only to ask for the benefits, but also he knows, the seafarer knows that he can provide a high level work on board. So it's very important, the preparation and these evolving challenges of the industry, and the MLC has identified these needs also, and we will talk about a little bit in a later stage about this important development of seafarer competence worldwide. Other, it's very close to what we're discussing. Other evolving challenges for the seafarers nowadays in this, as suggest over the topic of our webinar, the safeguarding seafaring in a changing world. When we're talking about changing world, of course, we have to take into consideration the technology uptake, the automation, enhance the operational efficiency, the digital communication. I heard that Adriana was addressing some of these important topic, the communication from seafarers to have some communications with the families and with the relative ashore. So it's very important, this digital communication, how we are prepared for this rapid transition to a couple of years ago that have very limited a capacity to connect to shore, and now we have better, let's say, better plans or better arrangement for communications ashore. So it's one of the benefits, let's say, to this technological advancement. Of course, the safety enhancement, increasing safety measures on board are also part of this technology uptake. We are not focusing on solely depend on the technology on board, fully rely on the technology, but to use it as a partner, as a complement for the delivery of a better work on board a vessel. And the efficiency improvement, of course, the intention is to streamline processes, the seafarer adaptation. As I mentioned in the previous slide, they require skills and knowledge updates. So you are capable of delivering a good work on board, and also you are not thinking in your current role, because if you are first entry, newly promoted, then maybe you're thinking in the coming years to grow up in rank in the vessel, to go to the next level, to go to the next rank. That means that you have to show that you are competent for your current role, and then you are competent also for the company to take you into consideration for the next rank. So it's a crucial part of our life on board this, the adaptation to technology uptake. Of course, all this supported by the MLC 2006 to advocating for seafarer welfare. So it's the second evolving challenges that we have identified, but we cannot move forward without mentioning one of the most important evolving challenges for seafarers nowadays, which is environmental protection. You know that we have been discussing in several stages worldwide this ambition or the goals for environmental protection set by the IMO or set by global organizations. We are part of this movement to protect the environment, and they are coming up some of the important topics on the table to discuss and to take into consideration that are coming or that are bringing up on board new technologies, new system, new equipment, new challenges, of course, when we're talking about energy efficiency, emission reduction, long-term sustainability. So it's things that can stress the life of the seafarer on board. They can think or overthink that they are not able to meet the current requirement, and sometimes they start feeling sensitive to this topic, or they start feeling somehow stressed because there are so many requirements nowadays, so many challenges to address, and this is one of the most important, because the shipping industry is moving towards better practices for sustainability, efficiency, environmental protection, and it's a complete transformation of the practices on board, the traditional practice to better measures, better protocols, better practices on board, and that requires, of course, the full involvement of seafarers. This is one aligned to the next one in discussing about some of the things that can stress the life of the seafarer on board. We have to discuss for sure about this a factor of this evolving challenge, which is mental health. And there are some of the measures that have been applied, not effectively in some cases, but there are some companies that pushing more to the protection to the seafarers, which are fostering open communication to support seafarers when they have some concern, some worries, when they have some stress. That is caused by internal shipping, internal factors in on board the vessel, or can be external factors that also can lead the seafarer to have these kind of concerns and preoccupations. Counseling services, providing professional support to seafarers to mental health issues. Of course, there are some ways that the shipping industry are moving towards this support, and also they are I was reading a movement for a shipping company a couple of months ago that they encourage the seafarer to go ashore when they have the opportunity, when they go alongside a port, and they stay with the limited, not limited, with the sufficient crew that can operate efficiently the discharge of the loading operation, and then they provide the hours of the good amount of hours for the rest of the crew to go ashore and to take a breath outside the vessel and to come back, and maybe if the time allows, to relieve the ones that they stay on board. And there was a policy by that company in order to promote better practices and to avoid this mental health situation on board the vessel, because it's a reality. Maybe we have seen a lot of cases, a lot of scenarios, a lot of stages that these are more and more and more being discussed at the international level, because the seafarers suffering from this situation, and also training programs that equip the seafarer with the skills to manage the stress and promote the well-being, to have some practices, to have some culture, to have some behavior in order when they feel stressed, what to do, who to approach, and also to maintain a constant communication with someone, because it's becoming stress in multiple aspects. So we have to ensure that they have the support not only by the company, but also the support from the team on board in order to ensure safety in all that it's being developed, because one made a mistake that can affect to everyone on board. So it's a matter of being all together in the same line and the same way, supporting each other. And we cannot move forward with this evolving challenge that is very important, critical to mention in all my presentations. I always like to address this because we are aware of this industry needs, which is the promotion of gender equality in maritime, because not only the equal opportunities to ensure that the women have the same opportunity as men, the same visibility, the same stages, and they have been performing the same duties on board. And we know some of the women seafarers are becoming a captain on board, and they they are performing really well, and they are opening doors for the ladies behind that are also seeing this role model in this the senior female seafarers, and they like to become also part of this seafaring world. So it's a constant promotion that all have the same opportunities on board to work as long as you have the competence to prove that you can do the work safely. The protection against harassment, of course, there are some measures established to prevent and address harassment at sea. There are some protocols established by shipping companies where they have the compliance protocol or complaint procedure, which um, they can do the they can do the report in case I heard that Adriana was asking something about that. They can do the report in if they have any complaint on board or any situation, including harassment on board, they can do the report. Some of the seafarers, they don't feel safe if they do that report, or they send that report, because it's the question if that is really confidential or not. But this is a protocol, is in place to protect seafarers on board. The anti-discrimination measures, not allowing policies that permit this discrimination on board. On the contrary, the policy and the measures must be in place to combat discrimination based on gender, and also to support for leadership roles, as I was mentioning, encouraging and facilitating a woman in leadership positions, not only on board, but they have shown that also taking up leading roles in shipping companies, but working ashore. And nowadays, there are some association, some organizations that are being established, conformed by to promote or to give more visibility to women in maritime. In Latin America, we have a couple of these association organizations: WISTA, WIMA, Women in Maritime Authorities, the Red Mambla, WINGS. There are some of the associations that are in place to promote the visibility for woman in maritime. So, making a summary about the latest updates of MLC 2006, which came into force in 2023, the latest updates, not only to ensure the nutritious foods, also including the training, the competence of the seafarer, discussing about the repatriation mechanism, and also the medical care offered to the seafarers, an important part, which is the living conditions on board. These are being revised into 2022 and enforced in 2023, if I'm not wrong. And also, it's something that I like to point out before I conclude, because this STCW convention that was that is also on the revision. There are also subcommittee on human element training and watchkeeping, which is working really hard for the updates of the SDCW, and you will see the alignment of both, because also in this updates are including most of the same topics that are being addressed, because it's a global need to protect the seafarer, not only to address the competency requirements in terms of competency standards, the emphasis in a new technology for safe operation, but also the environmental awareness, and most important, the mental health training, the soft skills, the ability of seafarers to communicate better, the ability of seafarers to address any adverse circumstances faced on board, and the of course the need to combine all this with the uptake of new technology and the preparation that they need for a sustainable shipping. So MLC 2006 remains a critical instrument in safeguarding the rights and well-being of seafarers. However, the industry continuous transformation requires us to adapt and enhance regulations, policies, and training frameworks to meet emerging challenges. These emerging challenges that we have been mentioning in a really short summary during this presentation. So it's very critical, and with this, I conclude my presentation. I'm open to answer some questions and to discuss further on any specific area. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Javier. It was a pleasure having you with us during this webinar. So I have one question before we close off. So we said that the MLC applies to ships over 500 gross tons. We know that there are plenty of vessels which are under 500 gross tons, which operate in international waters, let's say super yachts. Does it mean that super yacht crew working on yachts under 500 gross tons are not protected under this convention, and if not under this one, whether they have any other protection otherwise? Thank you.
Yes, I can answer your question. So what happens when you go to yachts is that you're going to have commercial yachts or private yachts. Now, to private yachts, unfortunately, it doesn't apply. However, if it's also going to depend on the flag state. If the flag state has a law that says you have to apply MLC to yachts, even if they're commercial or private, then yes, you apply it. But most flag states, they might apply to commercial yachts. And this includes if they're charter yachts, passenger yachts, and private jets engaged in trade. But if there's no commercial activity, unless they voluntarily wish to be under the MLC, then no.
Correct, and then as a complement to what Adriana was really accurate mentioning, it's also the right of the maritime administration, because when you see the size of a boat below 500 gross tonnage, it's like a tugboat or less, as Adriana was mentioning, the limited crew member on board. So it's the right of the maritime administration, how they follow up and they implement the monitoring on this kind of vessels, to ensure also that the work permits are issued in accordance to the global standards, not only to verify the vessels that are above 500 gross tonnage, and those are not inspect or follow up by the administration. So they have, if you see, they are, if we go through the some administration, they have the local regulations also to protect these activities in their local waters. So it's a good questions, and the opportunity to explore opportunities for everyone, not only for the ones that are covered by the MLC, but for those working on boats. They can also feel safe that some authority or somebody is looking at the activities they do.
So thank you very much. So this brings us to the end of this very informative webinar. Thank you, Adriana, and thank you, Javier. Thank you to the participants for joining. We hope to see you for our next webinar. So keep following us on our social media platforms. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you.